stories making headlines this hour. The government steps up quarantine measures to contain the spread of avian influenza after confirming the outbreak of the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain of the virus at 2 Korean farms. 4 armed men have abducted the head of the Korean Trade Promotion Office in Tripoli, but the authorities have yet to identify the kidnappers. Plus, the Syrian opposition threatens to boycott international peace talk this week unless the UN chief retracts an invitations for Iran to participate in the meeting in Switzerland. With these stories and more, next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Monday, January 20th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin this evening with the latest on a bird flu outbreak here in Korea. It's been more than 4 days now since the first avian influenza case since 2011 was discovered on 2 farms in the southern part of the country.
The government is making all-out efforts to contain the damage and prevent more cases. For the details, we connect live to our Kwon Soa at the news center. So, what can you tell us?
Good evening, guys. Now, the biggest question right now concerning the bird flu in the country is probably its origin. Now, authorities are saying that it's most likely that migratory ducks brought the virus here. It's been confirmed that a baikal teal, a migratory type of duck, was infected with the H5N8 strain of avian influenza. A group of dead ducks found in a reservoir near a poultry farm in Gochang, Jeollado province were infected with the H5N8, as well as in poultry farms in the same area and Buan. The first case was confirmed last week and the number stands now at 3. The AI outbreak has the government on high alert. To stop the spread, for the first time ever, they have issued a 48-hour standstill on the movement of any livestock and farm workers. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said earlier in the evening that the ban will be lifted at midnight as planned. Around 120,000 ducks have been culled for preventive measures, and more ducks and chickens could be killed in the coming days as there are fears the AI virus could spread nationwide.
So, how dangerous is the H5N8 virus and could it have any effect on humans?
Well, it appears that we do not have to worry about our health. There has been not a single case of human infection by the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain so far. The virus is different from the H5N1, which has resulted in over 370 human deaths since 2003, and the H7N9 virus that was infected humans this year in China for the first time and killed at least 45 people. There have also been questions about whether it is safe to eat poultry and eggs. In fact, consumers have purchased less poultry products over the last couple of days. Health authorities say, however, that food products are safe because there is hardly any chance that the infected products will enter the market, and even if they do, the virus is destroyed once cooked.
Good to know, but what measures will be taken by the government to prevent the spread of the virus?
The government held an emergency meeting this Monday, and apart from the standstill, nationwide measures have been discussed for migratory bird sites and poultry farms. Sterilization locations have been increased in the southern part of the country in the Jeollado, Chungcheongnam-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces, and also further north in Gyeonggi-do. The military as well as the police are chipping in as well by controlling traffic at restricted locations and supplying sterilization equipment. Also, the National Assembly's Agriculture Committee will meet in Sejong City on Thursday to discuss the matter.
All right, that was our Kwon Soa reporting live from the news center on the bird flu outbreak here in Korea.
Now to a massive security breach of personal data of more than 20 million people in Korea. Phone numbers, addresses, and credit card numbers have been leaked from several commercial banks in the nation.
This has forced executives of the firms in question to tender their resignations and promise compensation. Kim Yeon-ji has the latest.
The CEOs of KB Kookmin Card, Lotte Card, and NH Nongyop Card spoke out on Monday to assure the public in the wake of the nation's largest ever personal information leak. They said they would cover any financial losses caused to their customers in entirety and are also considering compensation for any psychological damage the breach may have caused. Later Monday, more than 24 KB Financial Group managers, including the CEO of KB Kookmin Card, Shim Jae-ho, along with the CEO of NH Nongyup Card, Son Kyung-ik, offered to resign from their posts. The information of at least 20 million Korean bank and credit card users was leaked. That affects almost all economically active people in a country of 50 million. The Financial Supervisory Service says the information taken includes the names, phone numbers, credit card numbers, addresses, and even banking records of customers. Financial Services Commission Chairman Shin Jae-yoon and Financial Supervisory Service Governor Choi Soo-hyun are among the millions affected. The government has warned that those found responsible will face extremely tough criminal penalties. Prime Minister Chung Won-won on Monday ordered the chief of the nation's regulatory body, the Financial Services Commission, to go after those responsible in the strongest possible way and inform the public about the exact damages and circumstances of the leak. Chung also asked for strong countermeasures to ensure such incidents don't happen again. Regulators have already launched investigations into security measures at the affected firms. The Financial Supervisory Service told Arirang TV that they are working closely with the Financial Services Commission and that they are looking into tougher fines and a suspension of business for the firms who had their data leaked. State prosecutors, meanwhile, have moved to reassure the public that the incident has not resulted in the leakage of any information to criminal organizations, for now at least. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Going overseas now to President Park Geun-hye's third day in Switzerland, the Korean leader called for boosting two-way investments during a meeting with Korean and Swiss business leaders.
A day earlier, she met with Korean residents in Bern and underlined their role in enhancing the two nations' ties. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who is traveling with the president, reports on efforts for bilateral cooperation.
President Park has called on Korean and Swiss businessmen to expand investment in each other's countries and seek ways to enter third markets together. Speaking at a Korean-Swiss business forum on Monday, the president stressed that investment in Korea will be a platform for small and mid-sized firms in the European nation in particular to expand into the bigger global market. A recent survey shows that 6 out of 10 Swiss SMEs are trying to diversify their markets, as most of their overseas sales are concentrated in Europe. Then why Korea? President Park pointed to the free trade agreements Korea has signed with various nations, including the U.S. and Southeast Asian countries, and ongoing trade negotiations with China. She also called for cooperation in the educational sector, citing Switzerland's global competitiveness and human resources thanks to its advanced educational system that provides the knowledge and experience students need in the industrial field. The president will visit a school in Bern that is well known for its vocational training on Tuesday and seek ways to strengthen cooperation in personnel and information exchanges with Switzerland by signing a related MOU. On Sunday, President Park met with Korean residents living in Switzerland and emphasized the importance of their role in further developing the two nations' relationship.
그동안 양국 관계 발전에 노력해 오신 여러분께서 앞으로도 양국을 잇는 가교로서 큰 역할을 해 주시기 바랍니다.
With regard to the recent unstable situation in North Korea, the president vowed to lay the foundation for a peaceful reunification based on a firm security posture.
우리 민족이 다시 하나가 돼서 희망의 새 시대를 열 수 있도록 온 힘을 다하겠습니다.
After wrapping up her stay in Bern, President Park will head over to Davos on Tuesday to attend this year's World Economic Forum. Upon her arrival there, she's scheduled to meet with Cisco CEO John Chambers and attend Korean Night, an event dedicated to promoting Korean culture and technology. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Bern.
And prior to her Swiss visit, President Park stopped over in India for a 4-day state visit that included a summit with her Indian counterpart Manmohan Singh, where the two sides agreed to bolster cooperation on the economy, science, and regional security.
For a thorough review of her trip to the world's second most populous country, we are pleased to be joined by Indian Ambassador to Korea, Vishnu Prakash, in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us.
Delighted to be here with you. Good evening.
Well, Ambassador, you accompanied President Park during her trip to India. How was she received?
Well, President Park was received with a red carpet welcome, and very warm reception was accorded to her. She's an honored guest, and we have a very special relationship with Korea. And if you see the joint statement, that says it all. That reflects the vision for development of our relations over the next 40 years.
Well, during the summit, the two leaders agreed to revise the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA it's called, which went into effect back in 2010. Now, how are they going to go about improving the pact, and how will this affect the two countries?
Well, the foundation of India-Korea ties is the economic relationship, and it's not surprising. Our trade has already crossed $20 billion. We are looking at $40 billion by 2015. Billions of dollars of investments have flown in both directions. And now we are preparing for initiation of the POSCO project, which is a single POSCO project is $12 billion of investments. So we are ready, both sides, now to upgrade the CEPA, as the name suggests, and because we believe that we can further enhance the efficacy of CEPA.
Well, speaking of specific measures, President Park suggested merging India's software with Korea's hardware. How do you see the future going about in terms of merging the economic and science sectors?
Well, we are very fortunate that, like Korea, there is a lot of emphasis on education. There is a passion for education, one. Two, today we have the third largest pool of trained scientific and technical manpower in the world. Three, we are adding 1 million engineers a year in the pool of trained scientific and technical manpower, of which 250,000 are IT engineers. So that is the kind of manpower that's available. And also in software, we are one of the world leaders, and so is Korea. To just give you a very small example, Samsung has the second largest research and development center outside Korea in India. And something like 12,000 Indian engineers and scientists are working for Samsung, doing cutting-edge research, creating the best of product.
How about in the nuclear front? Korea is obviously seeking to enter India's growing nuclear market by building an atomic power plant there. But is India as enthusiastic about this idea as Korea is?
We are as enthusiastic for the simple reason that India is a very fast-growing economy. And when you're growing as rapidly as we do, what do you need? You need energy. And we are deficient in energy. And what kind of energy do you need? You need clean energy. And the civil nuclear energy is clean energy. So we have optimistic plans, ambitious plans of adding 20 to 30,000 megawatts of power in the civil nuclear power in the next 10 years or so.
Well, we know how Bollywood has definitely made an imprint all around the world. In India, how has the Korean wave been received?
I know my friend has been to India in Nagaland, and you have seen it for yourself. Northeastern India has taken to K-wave and K-pop in a very big way. I myself seen boys and girls dressing like Korean stars and so on. And whether it is the K-pop or K-wave in Northeastern India or Mr. Sai all over the country, Korean K-pop is getting increasingly popular in India.
All right, Ambassador, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure to be with you.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features
restrictions is on the rise.
closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report, less than
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on the news are trying to cover up the South's true intentions.
A Korean-American missionary jailed in North Korea for over a year has appeared before reporters to appeal to the U.S. government for his release. The Associated Press reported that Kenneth Bae held a press conference at a hospital in Pyongyang on Monday, where he expressed hope that Washington and Pyongyang can work closely together to help secure his release. He also claimed that the regime has not violated his human rights in any way. Bae is the longest-serving American detainee in North Korea in recent years. He was arrested in November 2012, accused of crimes against the state, for which he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. In another chapter in the growing story of tensions in Northeast Asia, a memorial hall honoring a Korean independence fighter who assassinated a top Japanese official in the early 20th century opened its doors to the public in China on Sunday. But one day later, the Japanese government called out Beijing for allowing it to open in the first place. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The Japanese government says it is deeply regretful about Beijing's decision to approve the opening of a memorial hall honoring Korean independence fighter An Jung-gun. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga's response comes a day after the memorial hall opened to the public in the northeastern Chinese city of Harbin. The city's railway station is where in 1909 An shot and killed Hirobumi Ito, who served as Prime Minister of Japan and led preparations for the annexation of the Korean peninsula to Japan in the early 20th century.
This is the place where the Japanese Prime Minister was murdered, and for us, this is the place where the terrorist An Jung-gun was sentenced to death.
The memorial hall consists of exhibition rooms telling the story of An's life and shows the exact spot of Ito's assassination. The facility was built after Korean President Park Geun-hye brought up the idea of creating a monument for An during her meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping last June. Although hailed as a hero in Korea and China, An is considered a murderer by many in Japan. Tokyo had asked Beijing to scrap plans to build a memorial and call the embassies of China and Korea to complain about the matter. Beijing's decision to go ahead with the memorial comes amid already heightened tensions in the region. Seoul and Beijing have condemned the visits by high-profile Japanese politicians to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine and for Tokyo's refusal to apologize for the country's wartime atrocities. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And a kidnapping in Libya. A Korean trade official was taken at gunpoint in Tripoli on Sunday evening local time. While not much information has come out as to who the kidnappers are, officials in Seoul are working around the clock to win the release of the abductee. Our Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
Korea's foreign ministry confirmed Monday that a Korean trade official was kidnapped by a group of unidentified armed men in Libya. Han Seo-gu, the head of trade relations at the state-run Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency in Libya, was taken by 4 armed men on his way home from work in Tripoli on Sunday evening local time. The incident was reported by Han's driver to the Korean embassy, who said the kidnappers stopped their car and threatened both of them with weapons before taking Han in their car and heading west. The identity and motive of the kidnappers remain unknown, although there is rising speculation that Al-Qaeda may have been behind the abduction. The incident is being viewed as having been pre-planned, either for money or to gain political leverage. Officials in Seoul are working around the clock on the case. The Korean government and KOTRA convened an emergency meeting early Monday morning to discuss the incident, and a task force headed by the foreign ministry has also been set up.
We must put all our efforts into resolving the incident in a swift manner so that the kidnapped KOTRA official can return to his family as soon as possible.
Many parts of Libya have been hit by violence and unrest in recent years, with the capital of Tripoli declaring a state of emergency this past weekend after fresh clashes with armed groups. As of January 18th, there were approximately 551 Koreans residing in Libya, and although there have been a number of robbery cases against Koreans in Libya in the past, this is the first time a Korean has been kidnapped. Seoul's foreign ministry said that it will be working closely with all channels, including the Libyan government, for the safe and swift release of the abductee. It has also issued a special travel warning banning all Koreans from traveling to Libya. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Iran may be joining the Syria peace talks this week in Switzerland at UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's invitation. The UN move, however, provoked a pull-out threat from the Syrian opposition and a warning from the United States. Our Connie Kim has more.
With less than 3 days until landmark international peace talks in Switzerland over the civil war in Syria, the United Nations has invited Iran to the table, an invitation that Tehran has accepted. Speaking at a surprise news conference at the UN headquarters Sunday night, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said Iran needs to be part of the solution to the Syrian crisis.
Foreign Minister Zarif and I agree that the goal of the negotiations is to establish, by mutual consent, a transitional governing body with the full executive powers.
Ban said Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif had pledged that Iran would play a positive and constructive role in the negotiations. However, the Western-backed main opposition group, the Syrian National Coalition, isn't as sure. They immediately condemned the invite, calling it a deal-breaker and announcing they would withdraw from the talks. It was just last Saturday when the main opposition group agreed to sit down side by side with the Syrian government, but their participation now remains in doubt. The United States has a more complicated stance on the matter. They support Tehran at the table, but only on a conditional basis. The U.S. State Department has called on Iran to fully and publicly accept the Geneva Communiqué, a formal mandate which was agreed upon in Geneva in 2012, adding that the invitation should be rescinded if Iran fails to meet such conditions. Delegations from 39 countries will meet for the Geneva II talks on Wednesday in Montreux, with the Syrian government and the main opposition group possibly holding additional talks in Geneva on Friday. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The pool of countries participating in football at the upcoming Asian Games has gotten a bit deeper.
Stephen Che is in the Sports Center to tell us all about it. Stephen.
Hey guys, that's right. The Olympic Council of Asia has announced that North Korea will be able to have their men's and women's football teams compete. They were expected to participate as they did in the last 3 Asiads, but they didn't make it clear until now that they would take part in the latest edition. And with that said, the 17th Asian Games will take place in Incheon starting September 19th. Meanwhile, South Korea's Marine boy Park Tae-hwan has his sights set on the Asian Games, training in Australia to defend his 3 golds from 2010. Seeking to repeat in the 100, 200, and 400-meter events, the 25-year-old Incheon native added to his medal collection at the Victorian State Championships in Melbourne to boost his confidence. There, he won the golds in the 200 and 400-meter events. And moving on, South Korea has earned its 2nd spot in skeleton in the Winter Olympics as the Italians fizzled out at the latest World Cup. Ranked 9th in the accumulated athlete points, Korea was awarded 2 tickets to the Games, allowing Captain Lee Han-shin to join Yoon Sung-bin, who had already qualified. And with the latest entries, the nation will send 17 athletes in the bobsleigh, skeleton, and luge to Sochi. Now let's go down under to the Australian Open. 3rd-ranked Maria Sharapova made an early exit after being upset by her opponent, Dominika Cibulkova. She joins top-ranked Serena Williams, who was also ousted in round 4, paving the way for 2nd seed Victoria Azarenka to repeat in Melbourne. Meanwhile, on the men's side, day 8 also saw the world's #1 Rafael Nadal and living legend Roger Federer advance to the quarterfinals. And ending off with golf, Patrick Reed took home the trophy at the Humana Challenge in California. Meanwhile, Wee Chang-soo came in tied for 23rd. Now back to Reed. He shot a mediocre final round, but his first 3 rounds, where he scored a 9 under 63 on each day, allowed him to hold on and win with a final score of 28 under par. He took home a little over $1 million to go home with his hardware. And that does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
We got off to a rather polluted, snowy, and dark start to the week here in Korea.
Yes, and I hear the snow may not be as clean and pretty as it looks. For more, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung.
Good evening, Sean and Chi-hye. Well, as Chi-hye mentioned, the snow that's falling in the central regions is actually acid snow, which is a mixture of snow and yellow dust. So be sure to take your umbrellas if you're headed out. After this round of precipitation, we are in for a cold snap. Morning lows on Tuesday will drop to -7 degrees, but it will feel like it's -12 due to the strong winds, and temps will jump back to seasonal average by Wednesday afternoon. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is under the influence of a low pressure trough from the north, which is why we're seeing cloudy skies across the map with snow. Now, the central regions and the mountains of Jeju may see up to 5 centimeters of snow, and this round of precipitation should mostly come to a stop by tomorrow morning. However, the snow will pile up in the meantime, so if possible, it is recommended that you use public transportation tomorrow morning. Taking a look at tomorrow's numbers, Seoul starts off the day at -7 degrees with a high of 0. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan hit 1 and 5 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, Jeju and Dokdo peak at 3 and 2 degrees respectively, while Kumgang makes it to -4. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.